BluMetric Environmental Inc. is Canada's premier water solution and environmental consulting company. BluMetric provides a full range of environmental consulting services supported by bespoke engineering solutions for emergency, self-contained, and permanent water systems, and is always mission ready with a full range of in-house support to ensure your mission is a success.
Welcome to the Over the Horizon podcast here at Mass 2023. I'm Alan Dale. With me as always, my good buddy Jerry Carew. We are Gale Force Winds, and this conversation is sponsored by our good friends at BluMetric. It's wonderful to be here at this trade show. Again, a lot of people in the room collaborating, everybody open for business. There really is a sense of optimism in the air of all the things that are happening in and around Atlantic Canada. Chuck, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Chuck Firlotte, and I had as much of my career outside of Canada as in, so I'm equally as balanced, both internal and external to this country. But born and raised in northern New Brunswick, educated initially undergrad in New Brunswick and then onward to Ottawa from there. But I spent much of my career in the U.S., sometime in England, about 4 years in England, where I ran a regulated utility for about 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And the last 3 or 4 years I've been doing consulting, some board work, and working with companies to help them make a better version of themselves, and working with individuals, high functioning, usually senior people who want to get things done.
Now you straddle your life between the U.S., Turks and Caicos, and Canada?
I do. I do. I have some major work in the Turks and Caicos in the Caribbean, which is a fascinating place to work and live. And I was 9 years with NB Power, 3 as chairman, which brought me back to my native province quite a bit. And I have a select group of clients in and around the U.S. and Canada now.
Chuck, you've been in St. John's, Newfoundland here now for a number of days. You've been traveling the bazaars. We were at a trade show together called Southeastern United States, Canadian Provinces, and now we're at another trade show, which is the Atlantic Canadian Aerospace and Defence Association's annual show that they refer to as the Maritime Arctic Safety and Security Conference. You see a lot of Atlantic Canadian companies in your last few days of travels. What's your sense about what's going on in this part of the world?
I believe there is a newfound optimism in Atlantic Canada. I believe it's well-founded as well. I don't think it's hokey, and I don't think it's anybody's going on a fool's errand. I think it's legitimate. I think that there is a will to cooperate and to reach out. You had mentioned the Southeastern U.S. conference, where 6 Southeastern U.S. states are joining with 6 Canadian provinces for the Atlantic to talk about cross-border trade and ways and means of encouraging commerce. And so there is a lot of optimism and entrepreneurial spirit, and a fair bit of it right out of here in Newfoundland, in St. John's.
Is that something you would have expected? Let's face it, you've spent your entire career in the United States and the Caribbean, Europe. Is it a little surprising, or I mean?
Oh, it's very surprising.
Right.
I mean, I left a long time ago to follow the entrepreneurial spirit in the U.S. But now, as an older man, I'm delighted and amazed at what I see here happening, which is frankly outpacing, in my mind, the U.S. It's just, there is just a lot of excitement, and for good reason.
Chuck, this is your first time visiting Newfoundland. I believe, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's a bit of a secret sauce here in Newfoundland and Labrador, and indeed Atlantic Canada, and a lot of, and of course you're from here, you're from Atlantic Canada originally, and a lot of that is around the people and the culture. Tell me your impressions around the culture that you've experienced thus far in Newfoundland.
Well, of course, I was born and raised in northern New Brunswick, which has its own distinct culture as well. I see a lot of parallel to Ireland in Newfoundland, in both song and dance, and the ability to revert to those two mediums to tell stories and to have conversation. So friendliest people on earth, the warmest people on earth, and always looking out to help. And of course we saw that in 9/11 in Gander and Stephenville, didn't we? And we saw it more recently with the tragedy of the submersible vessel that went down near the Titanic, some distance from here, but off the coast.
Chuck, I want to focus on one other topic, and that is your desire to give back, and your desire to mentor people, and your desire to take all of your expertise and knowledge and share it. That is a fascinating and excellent trait. Tell me where that comes from. Why do you have this burning desire to want to help others?
My 40 years of traveling the world and working in corporations has taught me some stuff. I'm often fond of saying, this much I know. And after 40 years, something has to sink in. And every now and then, what might emanate from my mouth might even be known as wisdom, heaven forbid. If only my mother were around to witness that. And so I decided that when my corporate career, when the shades went down on my corporate career at the end of 2019, I could look for ways and means of giving back to people who sometimes need a little direction, irrespective of levels in organizations, and to businesses as well. And so I started my own consulting business, but about 20% of my work is pro bono, and I probably get more from that than the people I work with do. So.
Well, that's a great explanation of it. Chuck, I guess the final question I would ask you, you are a consultant, you are open for business. What is an ideal client look like for you? And did you see any of them in your travels around the bazaars over the last couple of days?
Oh, sure. Everybody is a potential client. In my mind, I do executive coaching, and I'm fairly selective on who I work with. I want people who are serious and who will put the sweat equity into it. I like leadership development, so training and development as well. I'm an old HR guy from way back. I became a VP of a publicly traded company very early in my career. So leadership development, executive coaching. And then the third leg of the stool is working with companies to make them more efficient. After somebody introduced me recently and said that I could go into a manufacturing facility, sniff 3 times, and tell you what was wrong. Well, I'm not that good, but my years of experience have allowed me to assess the situation pretty easily. And I also took some certification along the way a few years ago on how companies grow. So helping mostly small to medium is my sweet spot. Small to mid-sized companies that need to get airborne, that sometimes are struggling with issues.
Jerry, your thoughts?
Well, it's an incredible thing that you're doing. The pro bono work in particular is commendable. Giving back, Chuck. I just think about your career. You've been in the United States for most of it. You've been in Europe and the Caribbean, but here you are, back to where your roots are in Atlantic Canada. What's it like to be here at this stage of your career and seeing that optimism? You touched on it. Just touch on it another little bit.
Tremendously fulfilling. Tremendously fulfilling. There was a time when there was I don't think it's too harsh to say a culture of defeatism in this greater region of Eastern Canada. And it probably stemmed from the fact that for decades, from their founding in existence, they were have-nots. They're part of the have-not provinces, economically speaking. And now that I believe the tide is beginning to turn, so it's tremendously gratifying to see. Because, frankly, if you are an industrialist and you are looking to start a company, and you have a choice of where you plant that entity, because everybody wants you, right? Every province in the nation, and today every sovereignty around the world would invite you in with all kinds of incentives. But the number one thing you want is the culture right. You want optimism. You don't want a culture of defeatism. And that's so important. And that's why I'm gratified to see this optimistic view of the world now in this part of the country.
I have one more thing to say. You've been associated with Gale Force Winds behind the scenes, helping us out for over a year now, and I want to publicly say thank you for every single piece of advice that you've given us. It's helped us immensely, and it's an incredible thing to have you here in our hometown.
Great to be here.
Chuck, wonderful conversation as always, and we certainly appreciate your perspective on what's going on in our industries in and around Atlantic Canada, and thanks for attending these shows with us.
Much obliged. Thank you.
BluMetric wants to partner and work with Atlantic Canadian industries and organizations who are concerned about the water health of our planet and the people who inhabit it in an environmentally and culturally sensitive manner. BluMetric wants to join the growing number of like-minded, innovative Atlantic Canadian companies who are changing the environmental landscape for the globe in a world-class way.